add a resolution, contingency fund request to support new security function at the Human Services Building. Do we have to move or can I just add it? I never remember with committees.
You can either have a motion or if the committee agrees to add it, that's fine.
Does the
Handle it
committee
that way.
agree to add it? Okay. All right. So we will add that when we get to administration. And that's resolution 11021 that Brittany handed out for those of you who are here. Was there something else we were adding?
Mike's,
I have a substitute to propose
Yes.
resolution. There's one typo that I have in it.
Okay, well, when we get to that topic, I would suggest making a motion for substitution. Okay. All right, excellent. I have one comment from the public, Mr. Robert Lynch from Enfield. You know all the rules on our blue form, so 3 minutes, and thank you for being here.
Good afternoon. This will be brief. A couple of months ago, I came to this committee with a proposal that our Town of Enfield board had adopted. I'm a member of the town board, Robert Lynch, and I urged you to consider proposing to the state that we have home rule legislation that would allow town boards like Enfield to grant a 10% property assessment reduction for qualified volunteer firefighters and EMS personnel. There was some discussion at the committee about it, and the conclusion was we're going to have our staff look into it further and come back with some ideas. And so far, nothing has come back. I presume it is in process, and I just want to make sure you don't forget about it, because I'd like to have this so that we could put this before the state legislature at the beginning of the next session, next January, and hopefully get it adopted. And I know budget time comes pretty quickly in the fall, and a lot of priorities get focused on the budget. So I was hoping that maybe we could get some of the homework done on this before the budget season begins, and so that we could adopt something, put it before the legislature before the end of the year. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. We will definitely follow up with that. I believe that's all the comments we have from the public. Let's go ahead and do the minutes approval from June 2nd, 2022. Can I have somebody move that? Greg moves, Mike seconds. Any questions or comments or edits on the minutes? All right, let's vote. Greg?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Dan? Yes. Travis?
Yes.
And I'm yes, so thank you. We have today our Board of Elections Commissioners here. You guys want to come up? Steve DeWitt and Tamara Scott. And I invited them here just to, yeah, sit anywhere you like. That's fine. Anywhere you like. I know you guys are very busy. There's a lot going on, but I guess that maybe some legislators might have some questions, and just for you to give us an update on how things are going for you all. So.
Okay. We'll start by giving you as brief an update as we can. Elections is, we're very, very busy right now. We are in uncharted waters. First, we never expected to have an August 23rd primary. That came down the pike through a order of the Court of Appeals. And then Congressman Reed resigned and timed his resignation with the state so that you could have both the primary and the special election on August 23rd. I mean, you would think, most people think, great, yep, having both elections at the same time is good. The problem is that there are two separate elections. One election, any Democrat living in the county can vote in. the other election, anybody in the county can vote in. I've never in 20 odd years of working with elections have ever administered an election or been part of an election where part of the electorate was eligible to vote in both elections and the other part was only eligible to vote in one. And it creates a lot of issues for us to navigate, to carry the election off. You know, people say that Democrats will be given 2 ballots, but my understanding right now is that in order to receive 2 ballots, they will have to sign for each ballot, sign in for each ballot. So, and anybody else can do that. So that is our major hurdle. The other thing that I don't think I've ever had to navigate and is we haven't even certified the June 28th primary. We'll probably do that tomorrow. And also tomorrow we have to mail out our ballots for the August 23rd elections to all of our military and federal voters and UOCAVA voters. So we're doing 3 elections at once right now. So all that being said, yeah, we're very busy. And the other thing that the third election day mandated is that it put most of our poll workers in a situation where they're going to earn more than $600 for the year because they're working the third election. And that means the way IRS law is written, that we have no alternative but to make them employees. And we onboarded in the late May and early June, and actually we're still onboarding a handful more right now, 160 plus new employees, making the Board of Elections the largest department in the county by employees. And that was no small feat. And, you know, we got a lot of help from HR and but the amount of work just on our end was an awful lot. And, you know, people that took part in that have to be commended. One thing you may or may not have noticed for the primary election, we had tabulated about 80% of the absentee ballots that were sent back to us before Election Day, and they were posted on our website with the numbers that were, you know, for early voting and for Election Day. All those were put together. That's another new law that we had to administer. And again, that is no small feat administering that. We had about 790 early voters for the 9 days of early voting this time around. The turnout for the primary was, I think, 18% overall. It was about 19% for Democrats and 17.5% or something for the Republicans. There's also a new law effective July 1st where at Cornell University, any student that lives on the campus has to have a polling place on the campus for which they vote at. That's going to, working with Cornell, that polling place will be at Alice Cookhouse. So we have to do a little bit of moving around of voters living in the 4th Ward. And actually, they're going to be all voting at Alice Cookhouse. And then the students who live on North Campus that used to vote at Bell Sherman will now vote at Alice Cookhouse beginning on August 23rd and all future elections. It's also a new law effective July 1st where anybody that we mail an absentee ballot to, or we mail an application for an absentee ballot, we have to provide them with a return envelope if it's going to be mailed back in the United States. Yeah, postage paid envelope, yes. And that's what I can think of right now. I'm sure there's a whole lot more.
That's just a few things. Wow, thanks. Questions? Mike?
Where else but in New York? Thank you for both for, I know, and all of your staffs for all that you're having to do here. I read an interesting article, I think yesterday or the day before in the Ithaca Voice, talking about how low the turnout was statewide for the primary. And they said that we were like 49% of where we were 4 years ago. And we were like the 6th worst in the state. I'm wondering if that has to do with students, the change in the primary date, or do you have any thoughts on it, or just voter apathy?
Well, certainly, in 2018, the primary was in, the federal primary was in June, I believe. So, and that had a very high turnout. We were one of the highest in the state for the turnout for that. I think having the students, there were virtually no students in town, for this election. And so that probably has a lot to do with it. Just from where we sat in our office, the kind of traffic and phone calls and everything we're getting, you got the sense that there wasn't a lot of interest in the election. I suspect it'll be different for the August 23rd. I think not so much the special election, but I imagine the Democratic primary will have a lot of interest.
Thank you.
Are there questions from anybody? Thoughts? All right. Well, we do appreciate all the work you're doing, and I know it's a lot. And thanks for coming here just to give us an update, and so we know what you're facing. It's helpful. Yeah. All right. Take care. Yeah, I mean, that's the bedrock of what we're doing here, right? So, all right, we're going to move on to the Finance Department. Rick Snyder is up on the screen. Hi, Rick.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good morning. Either one.
I'll keep remarks short this morning. We have a resolution for you to approve, and that will then go to the legislature at its next meeting. I'm referring to pages 9, 10, and 11 in your agenda for today. And the resolution, which you can approve at the conclusion of my remarks, is simply to authorize the execution of the quitclaim deeds, which will make it possible for the new owners of those 11 properties shown at the bottom of the resolution to transfer ownership to the new owners. So those are the 11 properties that were sold at auction on June 13th. And you may take action on that at the conclusion of my remarks. On page 10, I have a short memo that describes what happened at the auction. It was very successful this year. We had 43 registered bidders, and the peak attendance was at 54 people. And the auction proceeds is shown on page 11 of your packet, which shows what the purchase price was for each of the 11 properties. And it also shows the total revenue that came in as a result of the auction. It subtracts out or minuses out the auctioneer's fees and the taxes that were due. And then it shows in the far right column the gain or loss on each of the properties that was sold. And the total receipts that came in that night was $468,688. And the gain for the county after subtracting out all expenses was $291,282. And then it compares in my memo what was achieved in previous auctions for the counties. We only budget $35,000, very conservatively for revenue for this line item, proceeds from sale of auction. But that is pretty much the net results of what happened that night on June 13th. So once again, it was a very successful auction, and there were only 11 properties sold. And so I would then just ask you to take a quick look at that resolution that we prepared to execute the quitclaim deeds, and I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Great. Thanks, Rick. Let's go ahead and can I get somebody to move this one? I guess I should read the title. I can move it. Authorization to execute quitclaim deed sale of foreclosure properties at public auction. Dan's gonna move, seconded by Mike. Thank you. Any other questions for Rick on this?
I just a quick, sorry.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
didn't mean to speak before I was called. I apologize. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Mezey.
Thank you. With Rick, the purchase price, help me just understand each one of these columns just in a quick second. When it says purchase price, like who's getting purchased from or to, or what's that mean? Or is that just a?
The purchase price is when the auctioneer lifts the property before the people, it's shown on the screen, and there's pictures that he uses to describe the property, and then the bidding commences. And they usually start about halfway of what the assessed value is, and it goes through a typical auction format where people bid against one another, and then the very last bidder, whatever the final bid price is, becomes the purchase price. So then the winning bid then has purchased the property at the auction when the auctioneer slams his gavel down. And we also take backup bids. In other words, if the first place bidder backs out, the second place bidder also signs a form that they will pay the bid price for the auction property. And so like in the first example there where you see under Carolyn, the very first property, the purchase price was what that winning bid was, $32,000. And the next column, current taxes, is what that person has to pay in current taxes. And then that's what the total revenue column is, the third column. So that shows you the gross amount of money that came in at the night of the auction for each of those 11 properties.
Got it. And then the total expenses, what else would be in the expenses?
It's the amount of taxes that is owed on the property and the auctioneer's fee are added together to show what total expenses. And so the total expenses is then subtracted from the total revenue. And then whatever is left over is what the county gets to keep. In most cases, it's a positive number. There's a gain on the sale of the property. Once in a while, there's two of them on there where there was a loss on the sale of the property, but those small losses are usually net against the gains from the other 9 properties that were sold.
Okay.
So that's how we come up with the net gain for the county to keep for its own use, that $291,000.
Sorry, I wasn't in, when I asked you what the purchase price was, that I was thinking about something different, but that it all makes sense now to me. The gain or loss, where does that, I hate to call it revenue, but where does that revenue end up in our accounting, in our books?
That's in unit 999. It's the unallocated revenue unit where we put revenue for the general fund that isn't attributable to any one department. So in that particular unit is where we record our sales tax, our casino revenue, all the property taxes that come in. It's general unallocated revenue. That's not specific to any department, and it has its own line item in that unit for the sale of these auction properties.
Awesome. I appreciate walking through the first time with this. So thanks for the context.
Yeah, thank you,
You're
Rick.
very welcome.
I see Ann Corman has her hand up.
Thank you. I'm not sure what the total taxes column means.
Probably current taxes. Does it include back taxes?
That's the amount of delinquent taxes that is owed. So when we apply that against the delinquent tax bill that caused the property to go into foreclosure.
So delinquent plus current taxes?
No, it's just the delinquent.
Just delinquent. Okay.
Delinquent, thank you.
All right. Any other question? Mike?
I realize that we're heavily controlled by state law, how we handle the sale of tax sales, but I wondered, you see a lot of auctions now, different private auctions, and they often have a buyer's fee, which goes toward the expense of the auction and the auctioneer and that kind of thing. Would we be allowed to charge a buyer's fee?
That would be in our contract that we make with Reynolds Auction Company, the auctioneer that we use for these auctions. And we're pretty lucky that we've not had to add that premium to pay for the auctioneer. He gets a certain percent of the proceeds based on a floating scale of what the property are worth or what they're sold for. And so you can see our auctioneer's fees are, they come to 6%. And that column there in the middle called auctioneer fee shows what the auctioneer actually gets paid for each of those properties. And it's a very nominal amount. And we do not add a premium like a lot of auctions do to add to the cost of the property, which makes it easier to calculate that night at the auction. And it makes it also easier for buyers to know exactly what they're expending when they make their bid. So we tell them that there is no premium for the auctioneer at the night of the auction.
Well, I understand that, but I'm just wondering if maybe that's something we ought to consider doing so that we could be reimbursed for that cost.
Yeah, I think we could certainly bring that up as a topic at some
Yeah.
point.
I mean,
We don't have
Thank you.
time right now.
No, I didn't expect to have
But
discussion about that.
let's make a note of that and we can talk more. Because I think it's a reasonable question and something to discuss. Okay, but let's get through this resolution. Anything else? I don't think we have anything else. So let's go ahead and vote. Authorization to execute quitclaim deeds. Greg,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
And I'm yes. So thank you. That passes. We are gonna keep moving right along. Thank you, Rick, for,
I was just going to make one more comment. At our next legislative meeting, I'll be sharing with you the room tax report for the quarter. And I don't have the numbers available today, but I did see the basic bottom line, if you will, for what was collected. And it's been the best quarter we've ever had. So room tax far exceeded this last quarter. Something's going right in Tompkins as far as bed and breakfasts and tourism, because the proceeds have been greater than any other quarter that we've seen for a long time. So I'll bring you that actual report so you can see the breakdown. We've even had the delinquent hotels that have been delinquent for so long in the past pay in full.
Right.
So, you know, it's a pretty remarkable report that you'll be looking at your next legislative meeting with some nice positive numbers for room tax this past quarter.
excellent. That's good news. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Look forward to seeing that. All right. Let's go on to county attorney. We have a resolution appropriation from contingent fund, county attorney's office. Can I get somebody to move that, please? Dan, Greg seconds. Thank you. Bill, anything to say about this one?
No, this just reflects the fact that the salary for the assistant we have in the office was increased. So she's now on an equal par with the assistant for the district attorney. She had not had a review in God knows how long. And I think it's well deserved.
Okay. Questions about this? All right, let's go ahead and vote. Dan?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Travis?
Yes.
And I'm yes. That was an easy one. Thanks, Bill, for helping our agenda move along quickly. All right, I'm gonna look over at Lisa Holmes, our county administrator now. We're gonna have a discussion about the Human Services Building security. Let's see, we added a resolution that we can also talk about. And folks may have seen, there was 1 or 2 emails about this. If this treads into territory talking about contracts or personnel, we may choose to go into executive session to keep that confidential. But I'm going to look to Lisa if we have to do that. So hopefully we won't have to do that. So anyway, Lisa, take it away.
Thanks. Thank you, Amanda. So I'm bringing forth an important item for the legislature's consideration and discussion. And you know, it's been a topic of some previous updates from county administration. And so I've mentioned several areas where several incidents that have occurred recently in and around the Human Services Building. And I've mentioned several areas where we've been following up to improve the security, including how we've handled emergency notifications and communication, building lockdown, et cetera. However, the increasing frequency and escalating violence that we're seeing in and around the county's Human Services Building is very concerning and is what I'm wanting to address here. For years, we as a county have prided ourselves on the accessible nature of our services and wanting to make those services as barrier-free as possible. And that's commendable, and that commitment hasn't changed. But I believe we're at a point now in the area of the Human Services Building where I believe a higher level of security is warranted and would improve the environment and the access for the public and the safety and security of the public and staff. So I'm bringing forward a recommendation to consider a magnetometer to screen building visitors for weapons, as well as armed security staff in the form of sheriff's deputies to screen for weapons and address incidents as they arise. This has been the subject of discussions among staff and trying to pull the information together, and that therefore I was not able to include the resolution in time for the packet because I've been trying to respond to the most recent incident. So I appreciate your being able to take the late submission. But again, we're trying to address these issues in as timely a fashion as possible. We currently have unarmed security staff in the building, and they've done an excellent job of responding to the ever increasing array of incidents and emergencies. But those current staff are not armed. They're not equipped to screen for weapons. There's a county policy against weapons in county buildings. And we are seeing and understanding that many people accessing services in the building may be carrying weapons for their own protection, but we can't adequately screen for weapons currently. So the resolution addresses our need to enforce the county's no weapons policy in the Human Services Building and to provide for the safety of visitors and staff. Just a couple of other factors for consideration. We've been operating for a few years. DSS has been operating for a few years under special conditions due to COVID-19. that's been allowed by the state where face-to-face requirements for certain services have been waived. This has led to fewer people coming to the building for services and waiting in the lobby area. So even though we're seeing fewer people in the building, we're facing an increase in these incidents, both inside and outside the building. We fully expect that those in-person requirements for DSS are going to be reinstated toward the beginning of the fall, which means that we'll be, or realistically, we'll be having even more people accessing the building. So really, to conclude, these additional security measures are meant to improve the safety of people coming into the building as well as staff. The department heads who work in the Human Services building are joining us here at today's meeting and can also speak to some of the security issues or answer questions that you may have as appropriate. And just thank you for your consideration of this topic.
Thank you, Lisa. Why don't we just ask questions and then we'll move the resolution after people have had a chance to ask questions. Are there questions? Mike?
I want to put this in a way that doesn't require us to go into executive session. Are there or will there be discussions with labor units about this? And this, if we take this action today, we're not authorizing filling positions yet, are we?
No, this would be going, I believe, further to, the resolution would need to go further to budget, capital, and then the full legislature. And then as part of the resolution, it would authorize the county administrator to enter into those discussions.
Okay, so we're not ready to advertise for these positions or anything at this point. Okay, that's all I needed to know. Thank you.
I will say that I just out of respect for the staff that are currently in the positions in white collar and in the building, I have notified and had discussions or provided notification that we would the legislature would be having these discussions about the consideration of this resolution that I was bringing forward, so that and staff in the building are aware that this is
So basically at this point, you just want to know that you've got the funding in order to proceed.
Funding, yes, and it's a change in government operations, which is why it's coming to GO first. It's a change in the way that we're doing business that we haven't done in the past.
I see Henry and Mike, but I also see Sheriff Osborne, and I was gonna just ask you, Sheriff, if you have thoughts on this or any comments you want to give us.
Hey, thanks, Amanda. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'll just make it quick and just simply say that, yes, Lisa's been in touch with me. We've had some discussions regarding issues at the HSB for some time now. I've gone down myself and toured the building with staff and listened to some of their concerns and what's going on. And I do know that when we had deputies down there for a week after the last major incident, at least from what I heard from a limited amount of employees there, that did make a big difference. So yeah, I'm just here for the discussion and provide any answers that I can. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Great, thank you. And maybe I'll also ask Kit Kephart if she has any thoughts you want to share, since I see your face there.
Thanks, Amanda. So yes, we, as Lisa indicated, she and I have had conversations. I think that to kind of second what Derek had brought up, that staff have reported to me that they experienced significant relief from their concerns when we had deputies out front for a week. I think the reality is that we have been seeing a real increase in incidents And that doesn't seem to be subsiding. We, in addition to some of the changes that Lisa indicated throughout the pandemic, we've tried a number of different ways to try to look at how do we make the building more secure? How do we make sure that things are as safe as they can be? But we are also seeing, I think people are aware that we are seeing increased need from the community for our services, but we also are seeing people that are in rougher shape. People are experiencing greater mental health challenges. It is not uncommon that somebody is experiencing impairment from substances when they are coming to our building. And we have seen a real challenge in terms of limits on services. So, people that previously might have been, going off to addiction treatment, or might have been incarcerated, or might have been in other places where they were accessing either services or they were not on the street, are coming to our lobby. And they need to, because they need help, but they're in rougher shape. And so I think we are seeing increased incidents because of that, and it creates a much riskier situation for the building. So I certainly support all of this, and I think that staff here will welcome it.
All right, thank you. Let's go to Henry Grandison and then Mike Sigler.
Yes, Kit, I know that you guys did a security analysis a couple of years ago. Did the security analysis call for metal detectors and everything else that you're doing now?
So one of the challenges with the security assessment that we did a number of years ago, I don't know if you remember the timing on that, but unfortunately what happened was we ended up bringing in the assessment, the person that did the assessment, right on the beginning of, or right as the pandemic was about to start. On hindsight now. So we had that person review our lobby. We made a bunch of changes at that time that were actually very helpful. But it's a really different circumstance now. And I think it's unfortunate with the timing, but almost as soon as that assessment was complete, the circumstances, not only of our building, but of the world and where people were at, changed very rapidly. For a while, as we went into the pandemic, business really closed down because, as you know, many of our staff were working remotely and our clients were receiving services remotely. But that has really shifted over time, and we've continued to see an increase as we go back to more normal operations, and as we see our homeless population continue to rise. It's creating greater and greater challenges that are related to safety. So,
thank you.
Sure.
Mike Sigler.
Hi, my question relates to the email I sent. Reading the resolution, it makes it sound very much like these are going to be deputies, whereas the email from our county administrator says kind of that they're not going to be deputies, but they're going to be security that may be former deputies or something. And I think the resolution really does need to reflect that. If they're not going to be deputies, I think the resolution needs to say that this is going to be a security. These people are going to be hired for security, but that they're not going to be like part of road patrol, or they're not going to be part of some other department, I guess. I really need that kind of specified, because I actually do think that's important. So
all right, let's
how you want to handle that in the resolution, if you want to handle it at all.
Well, to clarify, Mike, the positions would be considered deputies, and they would be part of the road patrol union. The question is, and it's more of a logistical one that for Derek and Jen, the sheriff and undersheriff, in terms of how to, who to deploy, full-time deputies versus part-time, and would we be competing with new recruits that are, would have to go through the academy and that would otherwise be a part of the, deployed through road patrol. I would really defer to Derek on those, but to clarify, they would be considered deputies. It's just the status.
Mike, you have further on that?
Well, then, if that's the case, I'm really hoping that this committee will vote this down and go for a private security kind of apparatus. I mean, I can't justify putting 2 deputies to protect our people. They're there to protect everybody, not just our people. Now, if we're saying we need security at this building, and I believe we do, then that's one thing, and we need to handle that. But to say that we're going to put sheriff's deputies into this building and that's their main job, I don't see that as a good solution. I don't think that's right. So.
All right, thank you. Sheriff, do you have further thoughts about that?
Yeah, I can say, I'm not pushing this agenda one way or the other. It's simply been a discussion at this point. My understanding is several other counties, thinking of Cortland County and I believe Schuyler County most closely. I mean, this is a pretty routine practice to have part-time deputies in such buildings, at least in other counties. I don't think it's always the only solution. I mean, I could also see a consideration in for fencing in the property and moving a guard shack outside. But that's got its downfalls and negativity surrounding that as well. But it certainly is another possible solution. As far as my personal feelings, I always prefer full-timers over part-timers. It's much easier. Our part-timers usually are retired people. Like Lisa said, that if they're new people, then we got the issues of sending them off to training and FTO programs for a good year. And it's also can be a scheduling nightmare, and we require more of them. But it's certainly doable on my end. But I'm leaving that decision up to you folks, which way you want to proceed with this. I do feel like deputies there would certainly help the situation, and I think they have. But it's not the only solution. And my second thought is that, if they were full timers, can they be used in other means too? But that would require much more discussion, obviously.
Great. Thank you. I have a couple of people in line. I just wanted to, on that thought, I wonder if adding in to the resolution something to the effect of, we will do this for a year and then we will reevaluate the situation. If, how it's working for the sheriff's office, how it's working for the Department of Social Services. That might be a way to not do this for the rest of eternity, but to think about it. Okay, I've got Mike Lane. Go ahead.
I disagree totally with Mike Sigler on this. I think that we should proceed with this, and they should be people from our sheriffs who are sheriff deputies. I'm really, really concerned if we hired private security, armed private security, and we had an incident, what our liability would be in that kind of a situation. And because they're not direct employees of the county, but rather contractual employees, but we would be certainly sued, I would guess. I'll leave that to Bill, that's his job, but I think we would be sued as well as the contractor if there was an incident with a gun, for example. I think that the people at our building on State Street are entitled to security, not just our employees who are very, very important naturally, but also the people who come. They come from Lansing. They come from Dryden. They come from Corn Street. They come from the city, the town of Ithaca as well. They come from State Street and the Northeast. They come from all over that go there. And some of them are the most vulnerable people in our county's population. They could be single mothers, for example, that need help from social services, or they could be people who need help from probation. I just think that our county administrator is giving us a good advice here, and I think we should proceed with it.
Thank you, Mike. Henry, you had your hand up. You took it down, did you? No? Okay. Travis?
I'll be quick. Mike just said everything I was going to say for the most part. I think we're obligated to keep our employees safe. That's a no-brainer to me. I also think in a bigger discussion, we need to start having with the city about cleaning up that area, because part of it is what people are bringing into DSS, and the other part is what goes on outside on the streets is adding to people's anxiety and concerns and fear. So the problem is twofold, I think.
Great, thank you. Veronica.
Thank you. One of the things I was going to say was also what Mike Lane just said, that I don't really have an opinion on the resolution, but that the framing of who would these people be protecting, it's definitely like it is our employees and also anyone showing up. Obviously, I assume we have more access to feedback from the employees who work there day in and day out than the folks who show up for services. And then the other thing, kind of echoing what Travis said and something that Mike Sigler said in your email, it seems like the proposals in this resolution are directed at protecting the inside of the building, but at least the incidents I've heard of have been outside the building. But I know I don't know everything, so I'm wondering if maybe like folks whose departments are there, or Lisa or something, could give a little like brief summary of what are the problems that have been happening that this is addressing, and the inside versus outside thing.
So you bring up a good point, and it's well taken that there have been increases in incidents outside the building as well. And we continue to have conversations with the city in attempts to try to address those. I think what this does address is the threat of someone bringing in a weapon from outside the building and using it inside the building. And with some of the incidents, the most recent incidents that occurred, the shooting in particular, occurred in the courtyard, and the individual walked right past the building opening and did not enter. But those types of threats are present, and I think we would be looking at more of a deterrent here. I could also look to Dan Cornell, Kate, or Kit to speak more specifically to your question, as they're in the environment daily.
Or I can
go ahead, Kit.
I can speak, I think, to what our security staff are experiencing and what our building is experiencing. So I think it is true that the circumstances of most recent concern, the heightened concern, have been the shooting and the stabbing that have happened, just outside our doors on different sides of our building. But I think for a while, we have also been seeing an increase in concerns where people are coming into our building and they are either agitated, they are they know one another. So one of the things that becomes very unpredictable in our lobby is that you have people come to the door, they're there for services, they come in, there's somebody else who's waiting in the lobby. And then they get into a conflict with each other. So I think that we are seeing that kind of thing. We are seeing people that are having medical problems, or sometimes they are overdosing in our lobby. We are experiencing people that come in and experience mental health crises, and they are not doing well, and it sometimes creates agitation that creates risk for other people. And the other challenge is that we have many people that come to our building and they're served very quickly, either by the Department of Social Services or by probation. But we also have an increasing population of people that come to our building and they are waiting for extended times. And unfortunately, we've done a lot to try to minimize the wait times, but for a lot of our homeless population, they may be waiting hours because we have to verify certain things to approve them for entry to the shelter. And we don't, until those things are verified, and sometimes that's a matter of getting a hold of other people, it sometimes is extended wait times. And people, if they're homeless, have very limited resources about where they can go. So we have, I would say, although we tend to think of a lobby or a waiting area similar to like a doctor's office where you're kind of in and out, it's really a different environment. And we are seeing increased risk. We are getting reports from our security staff that they are aware that people come in and they are carrying weapons. We know increasingly that especially the homeless population they are victim to other circumstances, people who want to take things from them. They're out on the street, and so they carry a weapon. And those, I think, are coming into our building, even though we are making currently every attempt that we can to limit that, but without a way to really scan people, we don't have that. So I hope that adds information that is helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. We do need to kind of get moving. Mike Sigler, do you have something new to add, or are you?
Yeah, it's just a question for the sheriff, actually, if that's okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So Derek, it's my understanding that the sheriff's department's actually had trouble recruiting people. I mean, we're going to want to start this right away using sheriff's deputies. Are you going to be able to staff that without pulling deputies off of the street, basically?
Probably it would take a little bit of time. If we were to go in the direction of part-timers, typically our part-timers are all retirees. I don't believe we have any retirees currently in the wings that may be interested. I could be wrong. We do have one or two coming up this year. So it's possible. The problem we run into, and I probably should have explained this better the last time, with full-timers, I mean, again, the training is going to delay things. With part-timers, we are going to find that we're going to have retirees that are capped by the retirement system, so they can only work a certain number of hours, which would require more of them to provide staffing for the entire week. But it's certainly possible. We do it currently with our airport, and then we backfill it with our full-timers when a part-timer is not available. So it's doable. Yeah, either way, it's going to have its challenges.
All right, thanks. Henry, do you have something new to add?
Yes, I was wondering whether you've discussed this with other departments like mental health, or even the legislative building, or whether we also need metal detectors and other police protections.
I think that's a little bit outside of what we're talking. Let's just
Okay.
focus on this building. We can have that conversation again for our building at another time. So let's go ahead and move this resolution and see where we get to. Mike, you move it. Seconded by Greg. So further questions or comments specifically about the resolution, not about the general topic? Dan.
So I hope I'm not stumbling into executive session territory here. I'm really not sure a little unclear about that. Are we, if we wanted to, are we allowed to hire private security with guns?
We could consider that. My understanding from other counties have considered that and been challenged by their sheriff's unions and have lost. So.
Do you know what's the basis for that losing? Like, what is there, I mean, it has to be something to point to. What is being pointed to?
So if we are, I think it's true for any position that would be considered a civil service position that would fall under a union job description. If we went around to hire privately, that could be subject to challenge. But for instance, any one of our current positions, if we eliminated a position and hired privately, it could be challenged.
I see. Thank you.
I see Dan Cornell. Did you have a response to that?
I just had one thing to add. Thank you. I think if you go with the route of hiring private security, you lose control over who the individuals are who are hired. And I think the county would want to have a lot of say into who they were putting in those positions rather than leave that up to a private person.
Great, thank you. Did you have other things? No. Any other questions about the resolution? Are we ready to vote?
Well, I do have a question.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Travis.
If there was a situation where an arrest had to be made, would the sheriff's department have to defer to IPD in that situation?
Good question, Travis. If I can jump in. We have jurisdiction over the entire county to include the city and even villages with their own PDs. So that wouldn't be an issue. I think moving forward, we would just have to delineate, what we want the deputies responding to. Is it things just on premises? And if it happens just off, are they going to be more of a security role for the employees? On the vice versa of that, if something pretty bad happens to them off the property, happens to somebody off the property, being law enforcement officers are obviously going to have to jump in and help. But so that could certainly be handled through ongoing discussions.
Thank you.
Good question. Thanks. Greg?
Two questions, or one comment and then one question. I don't know if this is a perfect solution, but I think it's a solution, and I think it's a solution in front of us. And so I don't know how I would handle if something happened and we didn't act on this, right? So that's sort of the framework I'm going with here. And I think something needs to be done. I think there were some comments made about hiring deputies to protect the community, and this is just a small subset of the community. But what I do think that this does is hopefully will preserve access to a much needed service for the entire community, right? Because if we have staff that are more comfortable there, if we can keep staff engaged and employed in the county longer because we've supported them and provided them resources, again, I think it's better for everybody. So yes, it's a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things, I think the cost to preserve access, and hopefully this doesn't become a deterrent for those seeking access. And I would ask that the sheriff and county administration and all the departments involved really focus to make sure that this encourages access and doesn't deter it, because I think that that's paramount in this conversation. So I support it. I don't know if it's the perfect solution, but I think it's a solution that it's worth exploring. And if there's another solution that comes along in the meantime, I also think we probably could use a few more sheriff deputies at some point. So I think it's a win-win all around. My second sort of comment, it's maybe a rhetorical question, but where's the city in all this? I mean, come on.
Yeah,
city
we don't
folks.
have time to talk about that.
Yeah, if you're watching, I think that this is a conversation that needs to be had at the Common Council level or a much broader level, because there's a problem, and again, I think it's another example of the city handing the problem or the cost burden to the county. So I look forward to hearing what their possible solutions are to be a supportive partner in this process.
I think we all look forward to that, but we're not going to discuss it right now.
Nope, just
Thank you for the comment. Let's go ahead and vote. And we will have an opportunity to discuss this again at Budget, Capital and Personnel Committee, and then again at the legislature. So let's go with Travis. I think he said yes, but he's.
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Mike,
yes.
Dan,
Yes.
and I'm yes. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, department heads who are here. We really appreciate you being here, but also all the work you're doing. I know it's not easy. So hopefully this will get rolling. Thank you, Sheriff Osborne, and let us know how else we can help.
Thank you.
We have lots more to get to here, folks. So let's be crisp. Thinking of Leslin, who liked us all to be crisp. Okay, we have another report and discussion about ITS infrastructure replacement and maintenance from 2020, 2024.
I think.
Lisa?
Sure. So to clarify, the next three items that are in the packet are the project approval request forms, the PAR forms for the capital budget for departments that report to GO. So that includes ITS, Board of Elections, and County Administration. These are the three capital projects for those respective departments. And it's informational items for the committee so that you're aware of the projects that are in line and for consideration in the capital program. So I can just to crisply summarize in the order that they're in the packet, for the Board of Elections, their voting machines, they're expected to need replacing in 2024. They're awaiting certification of the new equipment by the state to receive official quotes. So that's in the capital program as a placeholder for 2024. The ITS infrastructure repair and maintenance program, 2023 will be the fourth year of a 5-year cycle of ITS projects. And they have listed the significant projects for 2023, but what's new in 2023 is the centralization of computer replacement across county departments, which we already see is going to be resulting in some cost savings and efficiencies, as well as better updating of the equipment and protection against cyber threats. And then the last is for county administration, it's the streaming operations and media production equipment here in the legislature chambers. And it's really to maintain and to consolidate existing equipment in the chambers, much of which is coming to the end of its useful life and subject to failures. So happy to answer questions. Greg's here, Dominic's here, and can speak more specifically to those projects.
Any questions on those projects? I think I'm sure you can also answer questions if they come up in the future, but I guess I don't see anyone at the moment. So thank you. That was very crisp. Let's go on to our next resolution, terminating the COVID-19 employee testing program, ID 111011. Can I get somebody to move that, please? Greg, seconded by Dan, thank you. Pretty self-explanatory, but does anyone have questions on this? Or Lisa, did you want to say anything?
I can say a few words, but I'm happy to just answer questions to keep moving things along if you'd like.
Don't see anyone leaping out of their chairs, so let's just go ahead and vote. Greg?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Travis?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
And I'm yes. Great, thank you. Okay, now we have a couple of policies. Resolution to update the administrative policy manual policy 01-45, language access, and policy 02-14, evaluating employee performance. Can I get somebody to move that? Greg, seconded by Mike. Thank you. I guess any thoughts, Lisa?
I've just invited Dominic to come up. Dominic had a key role in updating the language access policy along with Deanna Crithers. So if there are questions that come up, Dominic can speak to them.
All right. Questions, comments? Mike Lane?
I wondered how many requests we're getting for translation services, where they're coming from, like which departments, social services, et cetera. And are we getting requests for translation services where we don't have translators?
Great question. Yes, we went through all of that data in the redrafting of this policy. That is kept by administration. We get hundreds of requests, somewhere in the hundreds, but it varies every year. I don't believe I saw it go over 1,000 for language translation interpreters. Mainly the departments that use them are social services. That's the largest number typically. The second would be the mental health department. And then there are some other departments where it happens a little less frequently. I know of an example now with assigned counsel. You were talking about, are there ones where we are unable to find an interpreter? That happens very seldom because we have contracts with Empire Interpreting Service and Language Line. Those two organizations that we work with have access to every language you can imagine, and they have a call list of people who are able to do some of that work. I think there's some one-offs, very specific languages that may take a little longer to get someone who can do that, but that happens very rarely in those cases.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Other questions? I assume that it's all posted in the other languages that this is available. Like when people go to a department, there's something that says if you need an interpreter, but it has to be posted in their language so they know that it's there, right?
Yes, there's an interpretive document that's available to all departments some have very conspicuously posted inside. You won't see one in this room, for example. But part of our plan is to have more signage in addition to just the sort of regular paper-sized. The way they do it is someone will point to their language on the document, and then the person at the front desk or something from a department can engage Language Line with that information.
Okay. And then also on the website, it's clear like
Today it's not. There is a Google Translate function on the website. This policy sets us up to do that in a whole different way in the future, using the 4-factor analysis described in here to pre-translate the website into key languages that are most often accessed in Tompkins County. Those resources have already been approved by the legislature last year. We're in the process of actually doing that right now.
Okay, that's great. Obviously people need to be able to see that this is available, and if it's not posted in their language, then they can't do that. And then I just, maybe to Lisa, I assume that staff are being trained in this and people are aware of it. I know we have staff coming and going, but this is something that maybe some people don't even think about offering. So I assume there's training on this.
It's something that we can certainly beef up. We go over, per the policy, annually with department heads to make them aware of the usage in the previous year, remind people of the services available and the policy, and that by law and also in service to the community, we are obligated to provide these services. But certainly with the new policy and the changes that are going to be forthcoming on the website, Dominic is making a concerted effort to make departments aware of the changes and what is going to need to be done to translate each department's website and the critical materials on each.
Okay, great. And I mean, I was particularly thinking also about the New York Relay, which is like, don't hang up. The policy says, don't hang up. And probably some people do because they don't know what that is. So obviously it's very important. Thank you. Other questions on that one or the other policy, which is evaluating employee performance?
And just to that policy in particular, Ruby, our HR commissioner, again, together with Deanna Carruthers, did the lion's share of the work on updating that policy. And it hasn't been updated, I don't believe, since 1997, and is very important in terms of our employees, in terms of recruitment or retention, satisfaction, accountability, and Ruby and her team in HR, as part of this policy, are intending over the next several months to offer a series of trainings to supervisors and department heads about how to effectively do an employee performance appraisal. So that's a very important component of this.
Yeah, definitely. Greg?
One, I think this is great. I think feedback is key to success in any organization, both going up and down and a full 360. So this is a great start, and I look forward to more of this. Are those trainings going to be required of department heads?
Yes.
Okay.
Ruby, did you have anything you wanted to add to? No.
I guess
They will be required of department heads, and the department heads will have to provide the list of supervisors who have responsibility over monitoring work performance. And it's a requirement for all of them.
I think that's great. I think the key in an organization probably as large as ours is making sure that these are consistently administered so that, you know, there's some relative from department to department, especially as we're looking to, you know, grow from within and create lateral moves and things like that. We just, so glad to hear you guys are all on top of it and fully support this change. So thank you.
Yeah, many thanks for working on this. Are we ready to vote? Did we move it? Yeah, okay. Greg?
Yes.
Mike Lane?
Yes.
Travis?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
And I'm yes. All right, thank you. Thanks for your work on that. We love policies in this committee. We do.
How are we
love
doing on
policies.
it now?
We love policies.
We're, I don't have the count. Bridget was just looking at the count yesterday and I don't have it off the top of my head. Next time we'll come back and let you know, but we're inching away. We're making progress.
We've done good over the years. All right, let's move on to some legislature topics. We, as you all remember, we've had a couple of presentations from our Independent Redistricting Committee, and we now have some resolutions to consider. So we would like to set a hearing for the public to come and speak to us, and then we have a resolution to accept the recommendations. So I never understand why the public hearing goes first, but we'll start with the public hearing resolution and maybe we can pass that one and then talk specifically about the content of the second one. So,
Amanda?
Yeah.
I'd like to offer a substitute resolution for the main for both of these resolutions, basically. So I don't know how you want me to handle that.
Right. Can we authorize the public hearing regardless of what the second
think so.
resolution is?
I think in this case, I would consider resolution 9B first.
Okay, let's do that. And then we can set the public hearing.
Correct.
All right, so let's go ahead and move it and then we can have discussion. So this is document 11013, accepting recommendations of the Tompkins County Independent Redistricting Commission establishing a 16-member legislature with appropriately revised district lines and adoption of local law number blank of 2022. A local, oh, I think it's supposed to have the word law in there. Amending Chapter 28 of the Charter and Code, election districts. Can somebody move that, please? Greg, seconded by Dan. All right, Mike Lane.
I'd like to move a substitute, and it's the corrected version. There were a couple of errors that I'd made working on this late last night. So I would move that, and if I get a second for the substitute, I'd like to speak about it.
A second.
Okay, Travis seconds.
Thank you, Travis. Let me start out by saying that we're not in a hurry here. We've got time. And I'd ask for a copy of the charter section having to do with the reapportionment process to be given to everybody. And I think you folks now have that. If you look down at C, one of the options that the legislature has is upon receipt of such a plan, the county legislature may return to the commission for further consideration of particular issues or accept its final plan. I've been concerned all along, and I still remember when Hank DeLay came in at the very beginning of the process to our legislature and spoke and said that he wanted to hear our opinions about the size of the legislature and the other issues having to do with the size. And I know they talked about that some, but I think that we should return this to the commission and ask them to look at an alternate plan that would have an odd number of legislators and would be 15 or fewer districts. 15 was the number we've had for most of the time that we've been a charter county, since going back to the late 1970s, early 1970s, because it was. And to me, to increase that will be more expensive. It will add to our administrative requirements for our staff, in addition to the costs. And I just think if we send it back to them and ask them to relook at this, now they would have an option of saying, well, we looked at it, we don't want to do anything different. That's what they did 10 years ago when they recommended going down to 14, or not they, I should say the commission at that time recommended going down to 14. And it could come back, or they could send us an alternate. It could be 15 members, or it could be 13 members. I guess it could even go down to 11 members. Not likely in my view, but that's possible. So that's why I brought this forward, and to say, let's send it back and have them relook at it. It could still come back. We could still have a public hearing on what they have presented to us now, later. But these don't go into effect until 2026, the 2025 election. So as long as we redistrict before that, I think we're safe. So that's my suggestion and why I've proposed this.
Great, thanks, Mike. Is there any discussion on the substitution? Travis?
I understand where Mike is coming from, and I agree with him.
Okay. Greg?
Mike, I appreciate you bringing this up because I think it's important, and I think that this is a serious part of the work that the legislature does. I understand what it says in the charter. I understand that we're not in a hurry. So if it went back to the committee, that would be a fine option. I do think if you look at all of the scenarios that they went through online, there's 13, 14, 6 with 15, a bunch with 16, some with 17. I don't know what new revelation is going to come out of that, right? And part of me wants to honor and respect the independent nature of the redistricting. And the other part of me says it's well within the rights of the legislature or members of the legislature to put that back to the committee and ask for something different. So I'm torn, but I think I'm more torn in the direction of respecting and honoring the work of the independent nature of that committee, realizing it's well within our right and not saying that it's wrong to ask something different. Personally, I just don't know if we're going to get a different result or if we're just asking, volunteers who spent a tremendous amount of time and took this process incredibly seriously to do work they've already done and already evaluated. So if there weren't 15 or 14 or other scenarios, I would say, yeah, it's worth exploring, but those scenarios are there and I think they were vetted and this is what they came back with. So that's kind of where I think I'm going to end up. But do appreciate this as a discussion item and folks raising concerns for where it sits.
All right, thank you. My question would be to Brittany and Bill. If this passed this committee, this substituted resolution would go to the full legislature still? Yeah, okay. I also thank you, Mike, for bringing this up. I think, it's certainly within the legislature's rights to question it and to, have a different opinion. I will not support the substitution. I don't particularly agree that an even number of districts is a problem. I think we've had one vote in 4 years that was problematic and even that worked out. So I will not be supporting that. I think Dan, did you have your hand up? Okay, Dan, and then Ann Corman.
Thank you. I was just wondering if it might be worthwhile to hear from Greg Potter. Maybe Greg doesn't want to wade into this one. I'm not sure, but I just thought I'd invite him.
I'm happy to answer any questions. I can tell you after listening to the conversation that the group, the Independent Redistricting Commission, identified and reviewed the criteria and the requirements under New York State at the start of the process. And during the course of those discussions, the even odd number of legislators was not one of them. So it was many other things, but that was not one of them.
That was not one of the criteria, right? Ann Corman.
Thank you. So I know the commission did not have, as far as I saw, a lot of input from legislators. So it would have been, I think, advantageous for them to get more input. And so I think part of it is, our discussion at the full legislature to really see how people feel. I see, everybody's point of view, but it would be, I think I would prefer like a robust discussion with all of us to kind of see, where we land on this, as far as putting it back, so, before we put it back to the commission.
Yeah, agreed, Annie. I think either way, whatever resolution this committee passes, it will go to the full legislature. Travis, you had your hand up.
I'm okay.
Okay. Greg, did you?
I'm good.
Okay. So yeah, so whatever happens here, it will go forward and still be able to have a discussion. And I just wanted to take 1 second to thank Greg Potter for his 3rd time going through this process. And hopefully he will be here for every census in the future, right? Yeah,
25 more years?
25 more years at least.
I can't guarantee that, Fred.
Well, he may chair the next commission, you never know.
Yeah. But thank you and your staff for a lot of work. All right, let's go ahead and vote on this substitution. Mike,
Yes?
Greg,
No.
Travis,
Yes.
Dan,
No.
and I'm a no. So that fails.
I will bring it again at the full legislature.
Okay. Great. So that was just the substitution. Now we have to go back to the resolution that we, right? We have to go back to the main resolution. We didn't have any discussion on that particularly. Do folks have other things they want to say about anything related to this and this resolution? Veronica?
I think Hank Delay made this point at another meeting since he's not here, that I guess we haven't discussed this at a full legislature, but the legislators were invited to all of the public meetings. So like we've had opportunity to weigh in. I know I went to a couple, others did. I saw Mike at a bunch. Yeah, just putting that on the record.
Definitely. Travis?
I showed up at one of the meetings. I will say that I do have concerns about what my district now looks like. And I didn't realize that was going to happen when I came to the meeting. It stretches from Spencer Road all the way out to Trumansburg. And they cut out the heart of my district, which is the Washington Park area. So I do have some concerns about the way they did it. And Hank's explanation is this is what it used to look like. I showed up. So just because you do come to a meeting doesn't mean that, I didn't realize that this was going to be an issue when I went to the meeting.
Definitely. Bill?
I just put in one fact before everybody. As we began this process, and I, of course, was counsel for the board, the committee, we realized that there'd been a very profound change to the statutory law in New York as to how much variation you can have between district sizes. Since this type of litigation began to occur with Supreme Court decisions and extending to other federal courts, generally speaking, so long as your most heavily populated district and your least populated district was within 10% of each other, there was no reason to challenge. As we read the statute, we realized a big change had occurred. It was now a 5% difference. And it was such a shock to come out of nowhere, to me certainly, that one of the things we did is we sent a letter to our state senator and state assembly person asking, is this true? And assembly person's office called and said, we've spoken to the proponent of this, and yes, it is true. It is 5%. So some people, I think, I can't make this up, felt this must be a mistake. And I think Westchester County did a reapportionment at 10%, thinking that was a mistake. We waited until we got word, and that 5% made a change in how we approach this. I think you'll learn as we go through this, there was concern about addressing the city's issues. We didn't want a bunch of sliver districts, I think is how Greg talked about it, where he was trying to fit them in properly. And the 16%, the 16 seat actually just worked best from everything we could see. So that's where that comes from in a nutshell.
All right. Thank you for that background. Kathy?
I just want to add that this local law, Section 28-1, composition of Tompkins County Legislature, terms of office, we're going to add in the date January 1st, 2026. It's packet page 40 to the local law.
Oh, okay. On the actual law.
Correct.
Okay. Because it is in the resolution, but gotcha. Okay, Mike?
To what Bill just said about the city. I don't think we should let the city drive us in our redistricting. And I think that's really important. Some of the things that have come out, for example, the concern about the student districts, and Travis's concern about his district and other things. Yes, there are sliver districts sometimes. We've had them. We tried to talk to the city 10 years ago and suggested that they might want to consider, they're always doing things with the terms of their their council people. They might want to consider going to 8 people, which would have worked out really well with the joint redistricting. It wasn't joint, it was two separate ones. I just kind of feel that maybe we've spent given a little too much to the city here and not as much to the county as a whole in its redistricting and some of the issues it presents. So I just wanted to say that.
All right. Are we ready to vote on accepting the recommendations? I think we are. Greg?
Yes.
Mike?
No?
Travis?
No.
Dan?
Yes.
And I'm yes. So that we'll move on to the full legislature. And then following up on that, we have the authorizing a public hearing on local law number blank of 2022, a local law amending chapter 28 of the Tompkins County Charter and Code, election districts. Can I have somebody move that? Greg? Seconded by Dan. Thank you. So this is just setting the public hearing for August 2nd at 5:30 before our legislature meeting. Questions or comments? Thanks, Greg. All right, let's vote on that. Mike?
No.
Greg?
Yes.
Travis?
Yes.
Dan? Yes. And I'm yes. So that passes. Thank you. All right, let's carry on. We should have time to get through a couple more things. So as we know, legislators have travel and training funding, and we've had various discussions about this over, well, this year, but also a couple of previous years. And this is our mid-year report. Thank you to Brittany and Kathy for putting this together. And so we can see how much has been spent by each legislator. This is on packet page 91, and it outlines where people went and how much they spent on various parts of that. So let's see. We had talked earlier in the year about it was important for us to make sure that our newly elected colleagues had the opportunity to go to NISAC, the general conference that many legislators go to, but also to go to something else if they so chose. And the idea being that probably not every legislator was going to use all of their allotment. And I think we each had allotted $1,000. So, so you can see we have a couple of our new folks have gone over that, which is acceptable. In that we also want to make sure everyone has what they need. So this is the point in the year when I will be asking all legislators if they intend to use the rest of their allotment. So the people who are not on here, they still have $1,000 in theory. And I'm going to be asking them if they have any intention of using that for the rest of the year. If they do, that's their choice and they can, keep that on the books. If they feel like they're not going to use it, they can release it back into our fund and other legislators can use that. Potentially, it could be used to fill in the gaps for the extra that our newly elected legislators have used. I think I'm getting that correct. So, questions, comments, or concerns from anyone? Or if there's anything that Brittany or Kathy want to add.
At Veronica's request and at the approval of this committee, I did register her for the Facing Race Conference, which is listed as an estimate right now.
Okay.
Very bottom right-hand corner. So right now she's only registered for the conference. We haven't done lodging expenses. Veronica had indicated to me that she would be okay with alternative housing options or lodging options, which I've sent to her. So as of right now, that estimate includes the host hotel's nightly fees, which so that could come down significantly. And the estimated flight cost out of Ithaca is included in that as well.
Okay, thank you. Other thoughts? All right. Along those lines, I mean, there's nothing we have to approve or anything here. So, I mean, we're sort of approving it. We're just saying we're accepting this and I will be following up with legislators. But I had a conversation with legislator Ann Corman recently. You can see on this that she had registered for a conference and she had reached out to me about, it was a minimal fee, but whether that would be approved. And my thought was like, well, it's such a minimal cost is that really something that someone needs to come to GO, to follow our process? It was something that I believe the Department of Planning was going to, and they invited her to go along. But that's not something that we've defined in this policy is, what's the minimum cutoff like, or if it's something that staff is asking you to go to, is that just automatically approved? So we don't necessarily have to get into it now, but that was one question that came up. And then additionally, the question of, legislators often get invited to luncheons or events or a dinner that might cost $50. And is that something that should come out of our own pockets, or could that be in this category of travel and training? It's not really travel and training, but we also have local reimbursement. So there's kind of a question there. I feel like we might have talked about this several years ago when I was a new legislator. And I believe the answer was no, we can't have that covered, but I feel like maybe we should talk about that. And if you're going to something as a legislator, not just as a, member of the public, maybe those kinds of things should be covered. So I would just, if anybody has a thought or a comment that you want to say right now, we can certainly talk about that. Or if we want to have this as a fuller agenda item in the future, we can do that as well. So I'll just look around. Greg.
I think we should talk about it at a later date as a fuller item, because I definitely think that there's some holes that we could probably tighten up and make clearer. And I would say it should probably mirror best what's acceptable for staff should be acceptable. And I don't think it should be any different. So that I think is important for me to preserve that in the conversation.
Okay, thank you. Mike, you gonna raise your hand? You look like you might.
No.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, so with that, I'll look more thoughtfully at it and then bring it back and we can have more of a discussion. Okay, so thank you on that. So our last main item here is brought to you by yours truly. And my thought here is that we have a very brief conversation right now. It's 1:39 and I provided a document that has links and some things that I did some research and found about what some other counties are doing in terms of term limits for legislators. And I thought that if this is something that the committee wants to pursue and wants to have a full discussion about, that I would then turn to our county attorney, Bill Troy, and any other staff that could be helpful to do a little more research for us, check in with NISAC, and find out, you know, maybe more details and bring back to us some more things to think about in terms of this, if this is something that we want to go forward with. So with that, I guess my question to you is this something that you feel like you want to pursue as a committee to discuss? And I would just open it up to that. Or not? Mike?
Well, having served the longest and having been term limited by the voters after 12 years and not been on the legislature for 4 years and then have come back. My problem with term limits is if you don't have the history with elected officials, the long-term memory, you're relying on staff changes a lot, and the power may shift from the elected officials to staff. Either not intentionally, but it just may happen because of the institutional memory. It's interesting. I noticed, just reading quickly here, some of the things you put in, Amanda. I like the one in Steuben County where they're just changing it again, allowing them to serve now 2 decades. I think it should be to the voters to decide, and people can always not run again, and they can get defeated, and I'm a perfect example of that. I'm not hearing it from constituency asking us to do something like this. Usually comes up when there's like an executive, county executive, for example, who people aren't very happy about, has been serving too long. And they say, well, we ought to have term limits. Look what's happened in New York City with their term limits for like the mayor. There've been efforts to change that so people could run again a few years ago. Then we've had most recently, they've been in place, and Mayor de Blasio could not succeed himself after 2 terms. I just think that leave it to the voters. Also, I would put out that would be my understanding that if we had a proposal for term limits, that would be a change in our elected officials' terms or status, and that would have to go to a referendum of the people. Mandatory.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Anybody else? Greg?
Yeah, Mike, I appreciate your comments, and I think it's important to have this conversation as a healthy organization, not when there's and I'd say we're relatively healthy as an organization, right? We might disagree at times, but right now we're having good conversation like this. So I think it's important. I'm a proponent of having a fuller, more robust conversation on the topic. I do agree that the voters are ultimately the ones that can term limit somebody. This comes not directed at anyone or for any other reason than what's best for our organization. I think the conversation has happened at the national level for a very long time. And I think that there's value in encouraging fresh perspective and fresh insights and leadership in government. So I also think it puts a responsibility on those that have served for a long time to encourage the development of replacements for their seats, or to foster a stronger, some may call it bench strength, right, within the community. So I definitely think we should talk about this in more detail. I'd be curious to hear other legislators' perspective. And I know there's a mixed feeling, right? Leave it up to the voters, or put something in place. So I don't know what the right solution is, but I think if we don't have the conversation early, and I think to Mike's other point, just based on my count, really, there's only 3 legislators on the current legislature that have served more than two terms. And I think we're doing okay right now. I appreciate the historical context, and I hope that that's not lost in this discussion. But again, I think it's a discussion worth having, and I think we owe it to the voters, and I think we owe it to the community to take a good hard look and say, what is the best structure as we have the same conversation about the number of legislators on the legislature. Should there be a limit to how long one can serve? So just I think it's worthy of a fuller discussion, and I appreciate Amanda bringing it up and also providing some background context with, but those are just my initial thoughts.
Great. Thanks, Greg. Travis.
Well, it's interesting. Every 4 years, the voters can decide if they want a fresh face, some fresh energy, if they want a different person in that seat. You don't have to have term limits to do that. There is something to be said about kind of getting somebody ready to replace you. That was a big issue for me because people felt like I was handpicked by my predecessor, and it didn't work in my favor. And that's not good for somebody coming in. Somebody needs to come in on their own merit. Somebody needs to come in without the expectations that they are going to be like their predecessor, that they're going to have a different way of doing things, fresh energy, whatever. I'm not opposed to term limits, but I certainly don't think 2 or 3 terms is where it should be, maybe somewhere along the lines of 4 or 5. I do appreciate Dan and Mike, and I'm not sure who the other long-term legislature is, but having that historical information, understanding why we've done things a certain way. There is a group that is new, that is going on their 2nd term, and then there's us that just came in. But who's to say that in 10 years, the majority of us may still not be on the legislature? So I'm fine with a bigger discussion. But if this isn't something that the people are asking for, if this isn't something that, our constituents are pushing, I'm not sure how we got here to begin with.
Thanks, Travis. Just on that note, I had talked to Greg, and I've been thinking about this for a couple of years, and I didn't have any sense that this legislature had talked about it in recent times. And I think it's a good discussion to have. I guess I also feel like now is a really good time to have the discussion because nobody's up for election anytime soon. We have plenty of time to consider it, to think, well into the future without it being a personal issue. I guess my own personal take on being in this position, which I said to Veronica earlier today, is just that I'm a steward of this position. This is not my job. This is not my career. This is not my, goal to have this seat for a very long time. My goal is to represent my community right now. And my community changes. A couple legislatures ago, my seat was held by a Republican, and that shifted. And now for a couple years, numerous years, it's been held by a Democrat. And if that Republican, was still here, he wouldn't be representing my community. And the people wanted a change. And I hope that as years go forward, new people will come in who represent the community even better than I do. And I don't personally believe that one needs to make a career out of this. And I feel that way about the, federal government as well. People who've been there for a very long time get set in their ways, and I don't think it's healthy. So I hear Travis saying he's open to a bigger discussion. Greg says he is also, Mike is maybe less so, but I haven't heard from Dan.
So I've thought about this issue in national politics for decades. It's always been alive. I've never had a strong opinion either way, and I still don't. Discussion is fine. I'm always up for discussion.
Okay, Mike?
I brought this up when we were talking about our goals. I had, not term limits particularly, but about what I'm going to say. I've thought for at least 3 years that we should have another committee about structure of county government. And that would certainly be this could certainly be a part of that. I have brought it to the previous chair and to this chair, and the chair didn't decide to do that. But we've had them in the past, and we've looked at issues like county executive versus county administrator. We've looked at issues of, I think we may have looked at term limits back in the 90s. I can't remember that for sure. And a number of other things, but I really think that it would be very educational for this legislature and for the people who follow us if we could take a look at those again. I can remember was some of my favorite committees to work on. We took trips to other counties and learned from them how they were set up there. All county government isn't the same. They're all different, how they arrive. So I would just, again, put in my plug for what I think is a need to understand all of these issues.
Great, thank you. Good points. Veronica?
Thank you. I'm not on the committee, but I support you all having this discussion about term limits. I think I like the framing, Amanda, that you put around yourself in this role as representing your community as it is now and being a steward in the position. I think we see, certainly in like the more public federal government, people get ensconced, entrenched, whatever, in like a position for a long time, and maybe it totally depends on the individual, but like might lose touch with the people they're supposed to be representing as the community changes, and are more closely in touch with like the body that they're on, or the people that have also been their colleagues for decades or whatever. Probably a bigger issue in like Congress than a 14-person body. I also want to say, even if we're not hearing this from like the constituents that they want term limits, I don't know what fraction of our county even knows that we have a county legislature, but it's like, I'm very curious. I did somewhat often, I'll say I'm on the county legislature and people are like, what's that? So yeah, of course they're not asking for term limits because they don't even I don't know. I'll ask Dominic about this later. I see you shaking your head and so I wouldn't take that as a reason to not discuss it. I think like it's maybe incumbent upon us to encourage some turnover. I totally agree with Greg that this seems like a good time to have the discussion when it's not personal. I hear, Mike, your concern about the value of the institutional memory is good. I just said not making it personal, but I really appreciate all the things I learned from you. And this thing about shifting the balance of influence or power too much to the staff from the legislature is something to keep in mind. I don't think nurturing people staying on here term after term is the way to deal with it, but maybe that's something to think about, especially if y'all were to engage in a larger conversation about the structure of county government.
Yeah, thank you for all those points. Mike, last thought.
Yeah, I'm sorry to prolong it, but I just wanted to say she's absolutely right. The least understood local government is county.
Yeah.
And we have so many responsibilities. I still remember when former Chair Tim, Tim Joseph gave us a whole list of things. And sometime we ought to pull that out again and everybody just take a look at it. It was very well written about what county government does for you. And Tim did a nice job with that. But I just want to say also that we are handicapped because we don't have a daily newspaper that covers our activities. If you look at Cortland Standard in the Cortland County, the big topic of their local news almost every day is things happening in Cortland, in the Cortland County Legislature. And we don't have any of that.
All right. So I'm hearing that in general, we're open to more discussion. Bill, I'm going to check in with you and we can talk a little bit more about what that'll look like and what we want to, how we want to move forward. And Mike, on the idea of the structure of government discussion, you know, I'd be happy to have that discussion here. I think maybe what it needs is somebody to kind of spearhead the effort. So I would just turn to you to kind of, you know, get us started, bring us some information, and we can talk more about that and see if that's something that this, you know, similar to this, let's see if that's something that the committee wants to sort of commission our staff to look at more deeply. So let's quickly see if there's any reports. I just wanted to very quickly say, I feel like Lisa reported about it a couple of weeks ago, but I also participated in the cybersecurity tabletop exercise with the IT department, and numerous other folks were there, and it was really informative and educational for me, partly in what, you know, our role as a legislature would be, but also just what our staff is doing and the plans that they have in case of, you know, a cybersecurity attack or issue. So just my report would be that, you know, you can trust that our folks are working hard on this and they have a lot of good things in place. And this exercise pointed out numerous things that they could be doing better. And so those are things that they're working on. So I was happy to get to participate in that. And then I will look to Lisa if you have anything.
Just one brief item, and I've mentioned it here before, but a reminder to the committee. County administration, together with, in partnership with the planning department, are going to be applying for a grant to help implement a county organizational strategic plan. Right now, our Dominic and Bridget are going to be working with Megan McDonald and Katie in planning to submit the grant application. The funds are there and available, so it's most assured that counties that participate and apply will receive the funds, and we would use that those funds to work with a consultant to lead us through an organization strategic plan. Some other things to note as well, prior to Deanna's leaving as Chief Equity Diversity Officer, she was planning on creating a separate diversity plan for the organization. And we would like to start this planning process from the ground up, incorporating diversity, equity, inclusion is fundamental to this plan, and also looking at other components that are important in terms of organizational and community engagement and so forth. So more to come on this, but I wanted to keep this committee aware that that's in the works.
Great, thanks. Questions for Lisa? All right, we do have our new Deputy County Administrator. Lisa, do you want to
Thank you,
introduce
Amanda.
her?
Gosh, I'm so sorry. It's like Bridget's always been with us, so I
Yeah,
forget
right.
that she's new to everyone here. So my apologies. A warm welcome to Bridget Nugent, who is in week number 2. Is that right? I can't believe it, of her tenure as Deputy County Administrator. So glad to have her with us.
Thank you. Yeah, so welcome, Bridget, and we do have a spot on our agenda each time for the Deputy County Administrator to give us any reports. So if there's anything you want to share with us in coming months, you are welcome to.
Great, I appreciate it. Thank you.
County Attorney, Bill, anything of interest?
I have nothing of moment to discuss.
All right, thank you. I believe we had Rick earlier, so we'll move along. Dominic, anything?
Nothing additional today.
All right, nothing from Dominic. Anything from committee members? Dan?
2 quick things. One is that a few months ago, this committee had agreed that on meeting days, we would try to wear government operations color.
Oh, I
So I just want to remind
forgot.
everybody about that.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, friendly reminder.
Okay.
And then the other one is that after, a couple of years, pandemic years, the other day I got a ticket in our parking lot. And that, saying that I shouldn't be parking there. And the next time, this is my one and only chance. And then I'll be ticketed and towed, could be ticketed and towed next time. So I brought up parking, I think it was about a year ago here. I would like to bring it up again. What that ticket means is that one of our staff people is out there spending their time doing that. So I hope we can have some kind of parking discussion again. Thank you.
I am so excited to put that on our agenda again.
Issue that will not go away.
Maybe flags as well.
Sure, definitely.
Not serious.
We got some good ones. Anything else from committee members or any other items anyone wants to share? All right, it's 2:01. We are adjourned. I did good. Katrina said we'd be done at 1:59, but I was close.
I haven't spoken up about the parking.
Yeah, if Dan hadn't spoken about the parking, we would have been done on time.
Dan, where did you buy that shirt?
You don't want.
It was a gift.
Is orange really the pretty color?
Well,
They got a sign to
I
it.
don't get paper.
Well, this is the color of the agenda.
Could we change the color of the agenda, please? I